in Ukraine, where Joseph Lindsley is. Joseph, reading about Ukraine saying the main strike and the counteroffensive is yet to come. What are you hearing there today?
Well, Bob, good afternoon from Lviv. And, I think, as always, there must be secrecy, and sort of Ukrainians in the Cossack tradition have to be pretty wily, have to, be telling the world that good things are happening, but they have to be very secret about their progress. And, these are, I think it's safe to say, we're entering perhaps the most difficult phase of this war so far. And, it was interesting that the advertisement you just had for mental health and ketamine, these days, and I realized, I think as I looked back and talking with you the past couple of weeks, I've even seen in my voice, some different edge to it, and other people have commented on that. But that's what I feel with every conversation I have here in Ukraine. And one of our volunteers from Poland, she wrote in, she said that Wednesday's episode was very dense. She said there's everything in it. Magnificent, wonderful music. That song about the magnolias. The sounds of the people singing in the streets. Friends, including those long not seen and those who might disappear soon. The gates of Europe. Those evil Russian drones that look like Mini Cooper, the size of Mini Coopers in the sky. That horrifyingly calm video of Ukrainians in the counteroffensive in those beautiful green fields of Zaporizhia. It's a maddening kaleidoscope, she said. And she wrote that she could tell, some kind of new stress in my voice. And I think it's very important to report that, here every single day recently, people are talking about this nuclear question. Whether it's, I was speaking with a Ukrainian woman last night, I just had lunch with an American friend, and whoever you speak with who is here and understands the situation, this is a common topic of conversation. Will there be a nuclear strike? Will there be a disaster at the Zaporizhia power plant? The world is thinking about this, but so is everyone here. But what's interesting is even it makes people nervous, but no one is thinking for a second of quitting or that there should be some kind of negotiation. No one here wants, in other words, no matter what happens, everyone is willing to keep going and to keep trying. And I think that's at the micro level, that's the greatest stand. Individual people who refuse to put up with this type of tyranny, and that creates sort of this collective energy. But it really is at this micro level where, I think it's, if you're in Washington or Brussels, you can be fearful because it is a scary thing and you're surrounded by people who are afraid. But when you're here, you're surrounded by such courage despite the fear. And that's what makes people strong. And yesterday I stopped by this little pizzeria called Porco Marco in Lviv. And I didn't want any food, but it's just a great place of good humor and just to talk to people. And there was a Ukrainian-American Jewish filmmaker there. And he was still captivated by the music from the Holy Day of Music the day before on Wednesday. And he said it was like a sonata of the city. By singing, we all became the city, became the spirit of the city. And the ultimate truth, he said, of what we experienced cannot be put into words. But he said, we can't define the penultimate truth, the secondary truth. He said, I felt wholesome. After 16 months of war, this music and the singing together made us whole again so we can face whatever comes our way. Mm-hmm. He said it was an aesthetic arrest, not a cardiac arrest, but an aesthetic arrest. We were suspended in time and space, and together we shared this lighthouse of being, of real life. And it sends a message to the world and to Russia that no matter what happens, here we are. And in a similar spirit, yesterday in our news bunker, I was talking with the mysterious woman here we call Moneypenny because she knows everything that's going on, a great Ukrainian. And one day I can share all of those stories. And we were meeting with a Ukrainian woman who lives in Germany, and she came back here to volunteer. And she's a great historian of the Cossack people. And she said, and she was nervous. She just got back to Lviv, and she was nervous about where the closest shelter was. This is something new. No one in Lviv has worried about a shelter in just about a year. But now there's a new nervousness. And then as we were speaking, she told us about the Cossacks. And she said, for centuries, they were attacked from the left and the right. And they had to learn how to be wily, how to be cunning, how to be secretive, and also how to enjoy it, because they were always being attacked. And so this became their lives. And so they had to find a way to make it manageable and tolerable while they were fighting for their existence. And she said so many times in history, the Russians in particular have tried to erase them, either with floods, many times through history, not just recently, bombs and famines, and the Cossacks keep rising up. And she spoke of the strength of the Cossack women, because when the men were fighting, whether they were fighting the Mongols or Europeans, the women had to manage the society. And so the Cossack women are very fierce. And then interestingly, the word for generation in Ukrainian is pokolinnia, which means to be on the knee, as like to be on the knee of your grandfather and to listen to the stories. And she said the great strength of the Cossacks is that they listen to the stories of their ancestors. And she believes, and I've seen this talking with friends who are warriors, that they even, they know the battle tactics from 300 years ago because they've preserved this history. And when I talked to you the other day about that, the video that my friend sent me from somewhere along the front lines, where, you know, they were methodically proceeding against the Russian incoming fire, and then every once in a while they would have to pull back, and they pull back so they could advance more intelligently. And it's kind of like a dance as you watch it. And as this woman was telling me this Cossack history of, you know, this fighting tactic of always being nimble, of always being willing to question your own strategy, you know, I saw that in the video, and I said, how did this get preserved from generation to generation? And she says it's this idea, the generation, pokolinnia, sitting on your grandfather's knee as a kid and listening to the stories and remembering them, and that becomes who you are. And that's really that's why Ukraine is able to stand today, she said. And then, so it was an interesting conversation, and then at about 3 o'clock in the morning, we had air raid alarms. We had reports of missiles coming in from the Caspian Sea. And for the first time, I've observed people going to shelter in Lviv for the first time in about a year, which is highly unusual now. It turned out those were false alarms. The Russians have been, you know, they send fake launches to confuse the system. And so everything was calm, but I couldn't sleep. And so I went to the news bunker and was doing some work, and plenty to do. And I heard from my friend that sent that video, the Cossack warrior who goes by the humble name, the Ukrainian. And he had sent that video I described to you a couple days ago, you know, as they were pushing against the Russians. And he sent some photos and some videos. And it took me a minute to realize what it was. It was pretty gruesome. He was in the hospital and had horrible, I won't go into great detail, but horrible wounds on his arm. And you could see a lot of, inside, the insides. And it was absolutely terrible. And he was lying there in the hospital as the doctors and nurses were removing the shrapnel and the bullets. And he was still smiling. And then, he was sending me this video from the hospital bed. And then, awful and terrifying to see. But then the last video, and I think this is that Cossack spirit of cheerful defiance, no matter how bad things get. The last video was what happened when he got these wounds. They had captured some Russians, and in the video, you see my friend and his comrades, his colleagues, his fellow Ukrainian warriors in a field, and they have their guns pointing at Russians lying prostrate in the ground. The Russians are bloodied but alive. And what was interesting is that the Ukrainians were not yelling at the new prisoners. The Ukrainians were joking and talking with each other very calmly, and such a cool, calm spirit. And maybe the Russians were even grateful that they're kind of saved now. They don't have to fight for Putin anymore. But seeing that, that juxtaposition of here's someone who's suffering immensely with horrible wounds of war, and still able to joke and to be good spirited about the progress of this campaign. And at a very micro level, whether it is, people in Lviv, whether it is the people in the wild fields in Zaporizhia and Donetsk fighting against this, as Putin tries to threaten more and more, as we hear more nuclear threats, it is this micro level of courage that is the only way for victory. And even if something happens, everyone here is committed to keep going.
It's no wonder that all of you gravitate towards the music in the cafes. You need that relief, and music soothes the soul. It's a powerful, wonderful drug. Joseph, you mentioned communication from one of our listeners. We share emails and texts, of course, that we get here for you. Are people messaging you directly? Can they do that?
Yeah, people find a way, which is great. And, we've had people send donations the past couple of weeks for drones, which are very essential to help Ukrainians spot the Russians so they don't get ambushed. And then people write notes and letters of encouragement. And so, yeah, it's hard to keep up with all that correspondence, but I do try to, and it's much appreciated.
Joseph Lindsley, editor of Ukrainian Freedom News, and we will talk on Monday. I hope you can relax a little bit over the weekend, Joseph.
Thank you, Bob. Until Monday.
Thank you for introducing Ukraine on your social media pages. That's very important, that much more people can get more information about the situation here and how everybody can help Ukraine to stay stronger and to save all the world.
Що сказав?
Well, which side are you on?
На чиїй ти стороні?
Come on now. Oh, which side are you on?
На чиїй ти стороні?